We have put together a gradebook and daily planner for educators. And what you're watching right now is a video that is intended to just be a quick overview of the different features in the gradebook to help teachers get started using this tool. Before I begin, I just want to say that this was designed with the BC curriculum in mind, and it is intended to serve BC teachers. Because it is made in Google Sheets, it can be adapted to fit anybody's needs, but it is primarily set up for that. So just know that going into this video. I'm going to go through these different tabs at the bottom of the screen, left to right. I'm going to fly through them, and that way we can get through this tutorial quickly. So on the very left, what we've created here is just a calendar overview, and this is to help planning classes, planning units, and what's nice about it is it's digital, so it can be modified as schedules never actually work out the way that we hope they will. So on the calendar, you have the day of the week, you have the topic that you're going to be covering in that unit, and then you can just in your outline put the different activities or things that are going to be covered in that given lesson on that given day. Now this is for high school. If it was elementary school, it would be a bigger layout because it would span a day, but same idea. Goes for the rest of the school year. The second tab is more of a broken down lesson plan view. And so some people prefer to have a lesson plan that's a bit more stripped back and bullet point, easy to read and easy to modify on the fly. So that's what this is. You have your date, the day of the week, what block it's going to be, the time, the minutes you have, all that good stuff. At the top here, I just like to put things that I want to remember to do every class. And then in the actual row itself, in the cell I've highlighted, I've just written the different things that I'm going to be covering in that class, the activities that I'm going to go through. Then I have a column for a cell for digital resources, and then the materials needed and any notes. Again, this can all be modified, but this is what I've found works best. So now we're going to get into the assessment part of the actual gradebook. And so we have a few different tabs. The first tab is a formative assessment tab. Now on the left here, we have the class list, the names of the students, and you need to have student IDs input in order for the final student report to be automatically generated. And we will cover that shortly, but know for now you need the student ID, the first name and the last name. And here you can just use this as you see fit. And so you can write a column title that encapsulates what you're trying to measure. And I have submitted as if there's different work that needs to be submitted, or you can just write notes. And then here's where you can take notes on the different students' abilities and their various needs that you observe as you go throughout your week. And this is one centralized place to have a significant amount of data collected on students to help teachers make informed decisions and make informed adaptations as they need to. This is formative. This does not automatically input itself into the final student report. Now, here we have a column for our summative assessment. This is probably the most intricate and formulaic part of the whole gradebook. So again, we have our student IDs, first name, last name. And then under here, so I've designed this for a grade 10 social studies class in mind. And so at the top, I have the various competencies that are assessed now in BC for the curriculum. And so those are the headings, and then under them are subheadings. And what I've put is they are essentially representations of data points that is evidence toward a final grade. So in grades 10, 11, 12, we're still using percentages, and so this reflects that. And as that system changes, so too can the gradebook be changed. But what you'll see here is the name of your assignment. So evidence is just a placeholder, but it could be called poster project. And under here, you can put the percentage that each student gets. At the end of the column, at the end of the row, you have a column that tallies the percentages automatically for you. And in the little gray boxes here, you'll notice there are different numbers. These are weights. And so if something is weighted heavier than another thing, let's say a final project or a large project is weighted heavier than a smaller assignment, this can be reflected here. You just need to make sure that these four numbers in the light gray add up to 1, because that means that your weights are all accounted for. Now, sometimes we assign a lot of little pieces of in-class work, and it's hard to fit all of that into 4 boxes. And so what we've done is there is a column for in-class work. This is not to be modified. Instead, we expand these little arrows up here, and we have a number of columns that we can record in-class work in. And we don't have to use all of them. The formula doesn't count empty cells. It only counts cells that have numbers in them. And so what we can do is simply hand work out a daily worksheet or something like that to students, and when we get that work back, we can record that grade in here. Now, because in-class work there's often so many pieces, it makes more sense to record that as one final total number. And the reason that is because our final student report, which I've alluded to, only has so much room to input student work. So this is the most relevant way to present that data to parents, and we'll see what that looks like in a moment here. But this is the summative section. Again, it can be modified. This is what it looks like for now. Side note is in the gradebook, any cells that have little triangles at the top right of the cell, you'll find a comment there, and often that is instructions to help make sense of what is going on in that cell. So that should be helpful for some. Moving along, so that was the summative data gathering place. This is now the qualitative data gathering place. Again, we have our student IDs, our student names, and here, this section is really important because on student reports, you need to have qualitative data and qualitative feedback, both from the student and from the teacher. And so this is a really good place to record that. So we have a column for student strengths. What was I really good at? Areas for future growth, what could I work on in the future, and opportunities for further development. Now this could be open to interpretation, but let's say it could be, I could I could get a tutor, or I could do a little extra work, or I could ask for extra work, something like that. And this is for the teacher to write. So the teacher could write, I could assign extra work, I could tailor the content to meet this need. My mistake. Beside that, here's where we have the section for student-generated content. So this is where students can make educational goals. That usually happens at the start of the year or the term. And then we have a section for students to reflect on those goals. Did I meet them? Did I not meet them? And then another section, as per the BC grading requirements, reflection on the core competencies. How did I communicate, think, and meet those competencies as they're laid out in the BC curriculum. So this is a section that can be also used to populate the final student report that we'll get to. But this is simply just a place where you will input raw data. You'll write it by hand, and you won't have to write it a second time on the student report. So this will be the place where that data is written. There is an option for some who are feeling more ambitious to populate the student-generated content with a Google form. The instructions for that, again, are in the notes in the cell with the triangles. And so you can look to that cell for that. And there are likely many tutorials on how to link Google Forms to Google Sheets. So I'll move along. Before we get to our student report, the very end of our gradebook and planner, what we have is a section for student attendance. So in BC, teachers are required to submit attendance records through MyEd. And so it doesn't really make sense to write the details of when students are absent or present or late on the gradebook itself. But what is useful is to gather the summary reports from MyEd to be able to input them into this attendance sheet. And so again, we have student ID, first name, last name, and we just have a summary of all of the times a student has been late, absent, or present. And that is, like I said, a requirement on the BC reports. And so that can be input here. This can also auto-populate into our student report, which we're going to get to next, where all of these other pieces will start to make a little bit more sense. So this is simply, you just put in the numbers and it will do the work for you. So we're going to move on to our final section, which is our student report. This is the most useful piece, perhaps, of this entire gradebook and planner for educators, because when it comes time to give report cards, if you've been keeping track of your data and keeping good records, you can generate these reports automatically. You don't need to write it all out a second time by hand, which saves, hopefully, lots of time. So without further ado, what we'll do is just explain how this works. And so at the top, you have the name of the student. The way that you choose what student you want a report for is there's a little drop-down menu right here. We're going to go in here, and this is why we need the student IDs. We're going to find the ID of the student we want. We'll leave it at 001 John Smith for the example. Currently, there's no way to have this say the name of the student, so simply just use the student IDs, and it's the best way to do it right now. So we have John Smith. On the left-hand side, we have John Smith's grades. Again, it's broken up by competencies as headings, and then under the headings are those data points that we had recorded in the summative sheet. So you'll see that it's all here, and then you have the current competency grade. The reason it says current is because we're required to give a midway report as well as a final report. So this grade might be subject to change when you give this report. So we have all our competencies, all 7 of them. And for social studies, there's actually 2 ethical judgment competencies to make 8. But for simplicity's sake, I've amalgamated this one into 7. You're free to modify it how you'd like, of course. So at the bottom here is a summary of all of these other competencies to give a current course grade. Currently, we're required to give 1 final grade for a course, and you can find it right here. These cells should not be modified. This is a report. If you want to change the name of, let's say, evidence 1.2, you need to go back into the summative section and change the name up here. The reason being, this can all change as your year changes, but this is supposed to be a hands-off automatic thing. So ideally, we're not modifying this if we don't need to. If you want it to look different, you're welcome to do that. So moving past grades, down here we have attendance. So again, this is the just the numbers from the attendance sheet. It's presented here. Quite simple. On the right-hand side, we have our comments. So comments from Mr. Bannister, that's me. You can change that to your name, obviously. Down here, what we have is an amalgamation of the different comments in the qualitative section. So as you can see up here, there's a formula. So I did not actually write this particular one. I wrote in the student strengths 1, 2, and 3. So those are 3 individual sentences. What the report does is it combines them into a paragraph. So this is sentence 1, sentence 2, sentence 3. It just streamlines things a little bit, makes it more presentable for parents to read. Similar thing happens here with the educational goals, the reflection on the educational goals, and the reflection on the core competencies. So this is a report that is, like I said, generated automatically. When it comes time to print this report and give it to parents, what we can do is simply go up here, the print column, or the print button, click on it, and what we get is a beautiful looking insert that can be put in a student report card. And you can modify how it looks, you can make it different paper sizes, portrait or landscape, change the scale, all of this good stuff. But then what you do is you simply hit next, and it downloads the report onto your computer. So now you can see that in my downloads. I can open it up, and then you'll see right here the report as a PDF. Again, this can then be printed, black and white, color, doesn't matter, but it can be used as an insert for student reports. So this has just been a quick overview of how the gradebook and planner works. Thanks for watching.